One of the most self-defeating things in life is to carry a grudge against someone, certain people or groups of people even. To be so consumed may very well, and often does, take control of our lives. It becomes almost like a cancer, which slowly eats away our very being. In many cases, grudges turn into hate and the seeking of revenge or retribution. It is then we turn into a person whose perspective in life changes. And we may just lash out against even those who may not be involved at all. The world just becomes an ugly place to live, and we become one of the reasons it is so ugly. That is so all symptomatic of believing that life centers around self. We become that perfect creature which life owes us everything. Nothing can and will go wrong or violate our precious but often limited life and thinking. When we are violated in some way, when we may be challenged by being asked to see life beyond our own little world, or even if we are asked to sacrifice for the good of others, our bubble is broken. That is when we then seek to lash out in revengeful ways. That is when truth is jeopardized. For what becomes truth may just be what we think supports our lives and our grudge-filled thinking. Therein is the sign that life no longer has any meaning and is on the path of destruction. In this world, forgiveness is an unknown quality. This is exactly where we are today as a people and a society. In so many ways, we have been drawn into a battleground which is fueled by grudges, hate and prejudices and revenge, in which verifiable and acknowledged truth has increasingly become the victim. Tragically, this has all been fueled by selfish game of politics, which has taken control in destroying our lives instead of being an instrument of helping to enhance our lives through justice and equality. Like the prophet prophet Amos proclaims, but let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. With the realities all around us of being people so caught up in ourselves, today's gospel lesson becomes a very difficult lesson to perceive and understand as being realistic. We just have to hear the first sentence to react by saying, what a daydream. Who are you kidding? Just listen. But I say to you that listen, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you. In light of everything that is going on, how in the world is this possible? How can I ever love someone who thinks and acts totally different than me? How can I love someone who totally disregards my well-being because of any inconvenience that it may cause them? How can I love someone who, in my opinion, is totally irrational in their thinking and actions? And how can I love someone who tries to bully me How can I have respect and love for those who post their negative rants on the internet, especially when they may be totally proven to be false? Where am I in all this? It is so natural and easy to react with hate or negative thoughts back upon these people or situations. Our lips almost instinctively respond with demeaning words, which only fuels and gives credibility to negativism. This is to fall into the trap of saying Jesus' words are totally unrealistic. For in our thoughts and actions reinforce being enemies governed by hatred. Revenge then begins to fill and take over our lives. We want to win. And with our bruised egos, we may ask, who can hate me? And dare to think that I may be wrong in my thinking. Forgiveness at this point is considered out of the question. One of our big problems is that we're constantly bombarded on the internet. And the internet has become such an integral part of our lives, getting us an easy way to enter into nameless and faceless confrontations. Our total circumstances have placed us on a downward pattern with no end in sight. Just think of this. Even if COVID-19 would end today, this downward spiral will continue. And Jesus' message in today's gospel will only be some kind of a pipe dream. But the truth is that the only way out of what we are living is to carefully implant these words of Jesus and the words of an ancient prophet. Do to others as you would have them do to you. Add to this Jesus' words, be merciful just as your Father is merciful. Well, again, this is easier said than done. In these statements of Jesus, Jesus is basically asking us to examine who we are and how we look at life, the world, and others around us. If we are blinded in viewing life with judgmental mindsets, then we are not going to get very far. For we will be viewed in that light in return. We will be judged. Judgment most likely will ultimately lead to condemnation, not only of others, but in the long term, ourselves. Listen to these words of wisdom. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. So where does that place us? And I, too, have often needed to ask that question. We become a person who is unforgiving and thus cannot accept forgiveness, a person who is riddled with all the negatives in life, and a person who dwells in the land of guilt. It is all determined by how our lives are being motivated. Motivation is the secret or the hidden aspect of life, which determines how we think and how we act, how we live. It is developed from very early in our lives by the environment and circumstances which we face, even as a very young child. The truth is that we are all born as a loving child of God with the ability and also probability of doing both good and evil. We are born with no hatred, though, no bitterness, no prejudice, or no judgmental thoughts. Early on, values and motivational thoughts are implanted or taught to us by those people and circumstances in life which surround us. You know, I can't help but return again to that most powerful song in the musical South Pacific, and I often think about this song. It keeps coming back to me throughout my life. You got to be taught to hate and fear. You got to be taught from year to year. You got to be drummed in your dear little ear. You got to be carefully taught. You got to be taught to be afraid of people whose eyes are oddly made and people whose skin is a different shade. You got to be carefully taught. You got to be taught before it's too late, before you are 6 or 7 or 8, to hate all the people your relatives hate. You've got to be carefully taught. I think our society is living this song. The tragedy is that when a mindset is implanted with negativism during the early years, it becomes extremely, extremely difficult to change. And you have to reach out in empathy with people who are taught that so early. Thinking and the thought processes are always clouded, distorting how not only life is viewed, but how we view life ourselves. Therefore, love is most directly affected and distorted. It is sad to see those who are not able to see life without any real clarity. And in some ways, we all have that kind of fogginess in our lives. They may never have had the opportunity to experience and understand what good life can offer. Just think about it. You be brought up in negativism. What is life? Furthermore, they may never be able to see the truth, although they may be right in front of them, for they can only see their distorted view of life. It's tragic. Jesus in today's lesson is directly telling us that we just may be the ones to help someone out of the pain of negativism and a false sense of love and life. It is out of the motivation of love and forgiveness that we are able to show someone the real joy of love and compassion. It means reaching out to those who may find disagreement or even hate or dislike for us. And I'm talking to myself also. This means that we must try to get beyond the facade judgments in order for the motivation of love to come forth and forgiveness to be extended, which has the power to bring forth a new life. Now, this does not mean, and listen to this carefully, this does not mean that we must agree with the other person, but it is to say that we must be that positive example of love which Jesus presented in his life, and we must stand to that truth. We are not to expect that we will change anybody else. But if we are to change at all, listen to Jesus' words. But love your enemies, do good, and lend expecting nothing in return. That is to say, lend your life, put forth your love, so that others may have your example, but expect nothing in return. What is returned or not returned is not within our power. If we ever expect life in this society to return to some kind of normalcy or have any concept of what it takes to love and care for the well-being of others, we must first be that example of what it means to love and to sacrifice out of this love. It means getting beyond ourselves and seeking the truth beyond our own wishes. Therefore, be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Amen.